Season 5 has been flying under the radar for large chunks of the anime watching community. I've liked most of the past couple seasons, and even I waited for a while just to catch up. But that doesn't mean this arc is bad by any means. It has a lot of elements that made some of the past moments memorable. Interesting quirk encounters, with various students showing just how much they've improved through training. Some characters are given more of a spotlight, as they each have important moments of growth to explore during their fights, and even beyond each individual character. Many new ideas are introduced that will change the scope of the entire series going forward. But before I dissect all that, I'm going to be exploring just what Hero Society has in store for the future of our characters and what it means to grow with My Hero Academia Season 5. Spoilers for the anime ahead. First, I have to say, the lore introduced was really interesting. This is our first real glimpse at All for One in the past. With a strange care for his younger brother and a desire to rule over others, he tries to convince his brother to follow in his footsteps. But all his brother sees is All for One taking advantage of those he helps, creating people who want to repay their debt to him. It's a very similar dynamic to The Godfather, or other Italian mob boss families. They help you, but in exchange for a favor. Ultimately, while they did help you, everything leads back to someone doing their dirty work. But he doesn't command those that helps him, and even stranger, he genuinely does help people at times with his quirk. This is a strong setup for an antagonist's backstory. Over time, we can only hope he gets explored even more as a character, since it's very clear we haven't gotten the full picture yet. I won't retread too much old ground since I already did a video covering his character, but I'm eager to see more from him. The fact he was able to sense his brother while in prison through his own quirk was very eerie, and alludes that even his quirk has more to it than we've seen so far. I really like the fights in this season so far. The budget put into some of these moments was really great to see, especially Ida. He really steals the show with the expressive nature of his speed-based combat. I finally get a chance to talk about Class 1B, some of my favorite characters to return to. The way they explain how their development has kept up with the main cast, because of how diligent they've been in their training, is great. It gives an opportunity to show improvement through different methods. Class A improved because of their battles with villains. Class B is for the most part stuck to their classes, and have the edge with the amount of time to train they've gotten. And though I may be biased, I've always thought Class B had more interesting quirks overall than Class A. Walls made of wind, copying the quirks of others on a time limit, recurring blows. Class B really has more off-the-wall quirks, and I love it. To see just how these unique quirks grow is interesting too, since not all of them have lateral ways to improve like Todoroki or Deku. The best thing these kinds of arcs can do is allow for improvement for side characters that main story plot lines usually don't leave much time for. This wouldn't be an analysis of Season 5 if I didn't talk about one of my favorite characters in the series, Shinzo. His introduction in Season 2 left a lasting impression as he brought up an accurate critique of Hero Society in a very subtle way. Heroes are meant to be one specific way. If you stray from that exact ideal, or can't meet the requirements laid out by others, you will never be one. Shinzo is one of the people who fell victim to that system. His quirk, brainwashing, is a very stereotypical power for a villain to have, and since his quirk awakened, he's been viewed through that lens. People always assumed that one day he would become a villain, but his dream was to be a hero, and despite what he was told, he pushed on. But the entrance exam for UA was not equal to all. It favored strength over all else, and with a quirk like his, he would never be able to destroy any robots to make it in. He was doomed from the start. But fast forward to now, after his appearance in Season 2's tournament, he has finally been given a shot at the hero course. Joining in the class warfare between A and B, his performance will determine whether he will be allowed to transfer in. It allows for the arc to have more stakes, because it's not just about will the main characters win, but how other characters we care about will be afterwards. It's always interesting to have the main characters fight other good characters, because they are made interesting by exterior motivations. In this case, it's Shinzo's struggles, and how the two classes stack up against one another. I speak for a lot of anime fans when I say, tournament-style arcs are in a league of hype of their own. It's a perfect opportunity to create unique scenarios, and allows for small microcosms of character growth, specific to each character. And for My Hero specifically, one of the best things this series does is have interesting powers to explore. But we've seen this style of storytelling in this series before with Season 2. What does this arc bring to the table? In terms of storytelling, it's more on the lighter side, to be fair. Most characters are along for the ride, and their key moments are them showing off, instead of going through character growth. But some of the matchups were still really fun, like Tetsu versus Todoroki, showing how much punishment they both can endure. Or one of the highlights of the arc, Ida, with his now enhanced quirk allowing his speed and duration to increase dramatically. For the most part, the story being told here is eye candy to serve as school-focused storytelling, after finishing the Overhaul and Gentle Criminal arcs. The main purpose, however, is to begin the major growth that Midoriya and One for All are starting to go through. After being passed down so many times, the power and capabilities of the quirk have improved. Deku learns that not only has One for All been storing strength over time, but the spirits and quirks of its past pass users. Narratively, it's an interesting choice. However, in this story, this new development is extremely disappointing for me. Many stories focus on superheroes, the society that's created, the people who are born out of it. These ideas are nothing new, and it can be hard to establish new material when it's so saturated with content. When My Hero came out, I was skeptical about if it would grab me because of how simple it seemed, but the incredible animation, the unique characters, the fresh perspective on hero society, and the situation of the main character drew me in. But as the series goes on, some of its greatest strengths have started to lessen. The largest change that's happened over time is Midoriya's place in the story, and the struggles he endures. Season 1 and 2 focused on the dichotomy of having great power but not being able to defeat everyone like it's nothing. He had to find interesting ways to win his battles, whether it's hurting his own body in exchange for greater strength, or utilizing a lot less of his overall power in exchange for control. There was always that inherent conflict. The first character arc that grabs you from the first season is even about his perseverance even in the face of odds being stacked against him. But if you compare the first 2 seasons to now, they don't exist in the same way, and his quirk's development is only straying further from this. Deku is made interesting by the dynamic of his power. Incredible strength that wasn't just something he could utilize in any way he wanted, but at least with his strength, that conflict is gone. His body over time is becoming more comfortable with his strength, and his output is increasing. He's becoming one of the most powerful characters in the recurring cast, and nothing about that development is too interesting, especially when you factor in just how much stronger he will become with 6 more quirks added in. Aside from defeating villains and becoming the new symbol of peace, his storytelling is becoming more and more simplistic. Unfortunately, that's not for the better. In fights, the only issue he struggles with is if he should go over his limits, which ultimately leads nowhere, since even when he surpasses his limits, he suffers almost no consequences. Don't get me wrong, the story here isn't bad, but it highlights the various cracks I've started to show. In my video analyzing the character of Overhaul, I mentioned how his arc is where the story seems to be going in a downward trend. These are the types of things I was referring to, but I don't completely hate this. In terms of quirks, it's interesting to give Deku a bunch of extra abilities to compete with someone who can essentially have whatever powers he wants. It's just sad to see that some of the story's strongest and most defining aspects have fallen to the wayside. Season 5 is around halfway done, I assume, and we'll have to see what the next arc has in store. The setup for the story, while it isn't what I wanted, it's still interesting. What kinds of quirks will Midoriya get? What is the true history of All for One? Where is Shigaraki? So many questions to answer, and only time will tell. I liked a lot of the fights in the season so far, but when it comes to the plot's development, I was left a bit disappointed. But what do you think of Season 5 so far? Do you agree or disagree with my feelings on the story's direction? What do you hope to see more of in the future? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed, check out the playlist for more videos like this one. I hope to see you next time.